earlier this morning was President Biden on a number of fronts. And then another story here, the president this week, along with Vice President Kamala Harris, trying to restore a relationship with the United Arab Emirates. The vice president taking a trip earlier this week, this past Monday, to talk about it. They're going through a leadership change, a big one over there. And we do have our next guest on the line right now. She's going to weigh in. Alexandra Hudson, she is a commentator with Young Voices, and she's on the other end of our line right now. Good morning, Alexandra. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. So kind of this meeting, I guess you could call it on Monday. The vice president was in the UAE. Just kind of talk about the meeting, how it turned out from your perspective. What do you know about what went on earlier this week?
Well, what's really interesting is that this initiative, the Biden administration choosing to reinstigate relations with UAE, we're hearing a lot of people talk about energy independence, that this is, a sign of pandering, a sign of weakness, like we're revealing how dependent we are on Russian oil and we're going there kind of cap in hand in a position of weakness trying to reinstigate these diplomatic relations. And people are saying this is why we need to be energy independent. And I'm not sure that's quite the right position because energy independence doesn't mean being an autarky, and it doesn't mean being isolationist and not relying on anyone. We live in a globalized world that's not desirable or possible. What it does mean, though, is that we should be very careful of who we get into bed with economically, and it means it's important that we do business with countries that share our values, like individual liberty and human dignity, and so this is important so that we're not tempted to turn a blind eye when countries that we're economically dependent on commit human rights abuses and violations and humanitarian violations. And so that's what I think this is really about. It's not necessarily energy independence as the goal, but just being very intentional and mindful of who we are allowing ourselves to be dependent on.
And so how does the administration exactly approach that? What more do they need to do? I mean, if you were in the president's shoes, or even the vice president's shoes for that matter, what would you do? How would you go about it? You kind of outlined it there a little bit, but elaborate a little more. How would you kind of restore the relationship there?
Yes, I mean, what's interesting is we're hearing a lot of we have heard a lot of environmentalists here at home in America talk about the perils of the Keystone XL pipeline with Canada. Yet as we are mixing that opportunity to become more aligned, more economically dependent on Canada, like a country that shares our values of individual liberty, human dignity, we've taken that off the table. Biden decided to mix that option, and yet we're going around the world to try and reinstigate relations with countries that don't align with our values. And so I'm not sure how that makes sense. It's not very prudent economically or politically. It makes us look weak. It makes us look hypocritical. Again, that decision makes us more dependent on countries such as Venezuela or Saudi Arabia and OPEC nations that don't have a very good human rights record, and that makes it look like we don't take our values very seriously. It's this kind of timeless question between meeting our immediate material interests, like cheap, easy, quick oil, but also upholding our moral values, again, of free speech, of individual human rights and such.
Alexandra Hudson, commentator with Young Voices, talking about the U.S. trying to reset this relationship with the oil-rich United Arab Emirates, and we'll continue to follow that story. Had some connection issues at the top of the segment with Alexandra. Our apologies for that. Alexandra, thanks so much for joining us here this morning.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.